Hello and welcome to Cupcake Addiction's Christmas tree piñata tutorial, where I'll be showing you how to make this awesome Christmas tree piñata, perfect because you can make it up to a week in advance so you don't have any extra work to do on Christmas Day. Tools and equipment that we will be using today. I'm using an iced cake board. So this is just a regular cake board and I've iced it. I've got a tutorial which shows you how to ice a cake board, and that's a little bit optional. I like to put mine on a cake board if I'm going to give it away or take it somewhere for lunch, but you can of course just use a plate or anything you like. I'm using a sharp knife, 3 spoons, 2 Ziploc bags, a pair of scissors, a little bit of green fondant, either fondant or modelling chocolate will do. I've got a giant cupcake case. So this is a giant silicone cupcake case and it must be silicone. You can't do this with the metal cupcake cases. 2 spatulas, some melted dark chocolate, some melted green candy melts. I've also got some melted yellow chocolate or yellow candy melts. A little bit of candy for decorating, so regular M&Ms and miniature M&Ms, both in the same bowl there. I've got a pre-prepared little fondant bow. This is just an optional extra if you decide you want to go ahead and make those presents, and I'll be showing you how to make those in this tutorial. A pre-prepared chocolate star, which I'll also be showing you how to make in this tutorial. For candy to go inside my piñata, I'm using some candy canes, very Christmassy, and I just picked some of my favourite candies that I think are going to give a really nice spill effect. I've also got 3 little pieces of wax paper or greaseproof paper, just a shallow tray or bowl, and my star template, which I will link to in the description box below. So let's get started. Now, the first thing that we want to do is you want to start preparing the actual base of your piñata, because this needs to go into the fridge and have a little bit of time to dry. So the bottom half's going to be dark chocolate and the top half's going to be those melted green candy melts. So this is where my spatulas come in. You just want to pour in that dark chocolate, and not all of it, about half to 2/3. And you can either tip it, it depends on how fluid your chocolate is. So you can either tip it like this so that you're sort of tipping it up the sides of your giant cupcake case, or if you find your chocolate's a little bit thicker, you can just use your spatula and sort of just scoop it up the sides. With this one too, 2 thin coats is better than 1 thick coat. So once you're happy you've got a relatively nice coating, just scoop a bit of it up and just give yourself a bit more around those top edges, because you want a really nice thick top to be able to join the two together. We'll repeat that process with the green candy melts. Perfect. Those 2 are going to go off into the fridge for about 5 or 10 minutes until they're completely set. Alright, so while those 2 are in the fridge setting, I'm going to show you how to make the little star that's going to go on top of your Christmas tree. And I like mine to be a little bit oversized, the star, because I really want it to be nice and big. So I've got a printable template, which as I said I'll link to in the description box below. But for this you're going to need the template, your little piece of wax paper and your flat tray. You'll also need your Ziploc bag, a spoon and those yellow candy melts or yellow melted chocolate. Scoop some of those yellow candy melts into our Ziploc bag, pushing it all the way to the corner before we seal it up and making sure we let any air out of the bag. Then you want to cut quite a reasonable sized tip off your Ziploc bag. If you cut it too fine, it's just going to take you longer to do this. So you can see there, quite a thick strip is coming out. So just holding your wax paper, or you can sticky tape it down, you just want to trace around the outside edges of your star, and then you want to fill your star in. Just be careful not to get too much of that yellow chocolate into the corners, because we're going to tap this down and you really want your corners to stay nice and defined. So just sort of press it into the corners, but then kind of use the tip of the bag just to drag it out again so that it's not too thick in the corners. Alright, so once your little star's looking something like this, you can pop it into the plate, just that little piece of wax paper, or onto your tray, oven tray, whatever it is that you're using, and you want to give it a couple of good hard taps on the bench. And what that does is it actually just smooths out the top of it so that you don't have any bumpy ridges. And then if you need to, you can just go around and just smooth off any edges that might have come out of shape a little bit. Beautiful. That one's going to go off into the fridge until it's completely set. All right, now while our star is setting and our base is setting, we can prepare a couple of these presents. They're a bit optional, but whenever I make something like this, I do like to use a cake board or something like that to really, I guess, extend the size of my giant piñata. So I'm just going to take that fondant or that modelling chocolate, and you can also use square candies like caramels or licorice all sorts for this if you don't want to use fondant. But I'm just rolling it into a ball, and then I'm just going to sort of squish it out so that it's a bit of an oval, I guess, and use the sharp knife just to cut it into a square. All different shapes and sizes is great for these. Perfect. So something about that size for our present. I'm just going to use my fingers just to neaten off the edges. I've also got this little pre-made bow. Now I've got a whole tutorial on my channel, MyCupcakeAddiction, which shows you how to make these little bows, which I'll link to in the description box below. I kind of think the presents look okay without them, but if you want to go that extra mile and have the little bow on top, they do kind of make them just a little bit cuter. All right, now for the little ribbons on our present box, I'm just wiping the tip of that Ziploc bag off. It is quite a nice thick tip. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to use a piece of wax paper so we don't make too much of a mess. And we're going to use this to make our ribbons. So to make our ribbons, I'm just going to come across, up the side, straight over the top, and on the other side. So you'll see I start a little bit before my present and I finish a little bit after. That's just so that I've got a bit more control, and my wobbly bits are normally at the starts and the ends. Beautiful. It also saves you having another colour of fondant. All right, now straight away you want to pick that up and we're just going to tuck under any of those little bits of melted chocolate so that it's really nice and neat. So just tucking under the present there. Stick it on a fresh sheet, so your other sheet of wax paper. And if you want a bow, on goes the bow. Really cute and really simple little present. So it's only been about 5 or 6 minutes and both of my first coats are nice and firm. We're just going to do exactly the same thing again and just apply the rest of that melted dark chocolate to the bottom and the rest of the green candy melt to the top in a second coat, spatulaing it up the sides and making sure to give our edges a nice coat. If you're using candy melts, you'll have no problems with them setting. They do set really hard. If you're using chocolate, however, you want to make sure that you're using a compound chocolate. So I use actual proper baking chocolate or chocolate that's designed for melting and baking. If you were to use, say, a block chocolate or a really high quality couverture chocolate, it actually requires tempering so that it will set nice and firm. Otherwise, it will always stay a little bit soft. So just bear in mind what sort of chocolate you choose when you're picking your chocolate for this piñata. Back into the fridge until they're completely set. Coming back from the fridge now, all of our little pieces are dry. So our star, once that's dry, should just come off that baking paper really, really nice and easily. And your 2 pieces of your Christmas tree. So when you take these out, what you want to do is you want to sort of roll that silicone down around the outside edges, and you'll actually hear it kind of peeling away from the chocolate. Try to touch the outside edges of the chocolate as little as you possibly can because it will get fingerprints. So you'll see there I haven't touched the outside of the chocolate at all, just the case. And then I'm putting my hands on the inside and out comes our top section. Before you take the top section out, you can see any of these little sort of raggedy edges. You can just go around and just sort of break these off. Otherwise, you can use your sharp knife and just come around the edges really quite gently because you don't want to take any chunks off there, but you do want to neaten it up a little bit. Beautiful. Don't worry too much about the littler sort of sections or the littler details, just the bigger chunky ones that are more noticeable. Lovely. Now do the green first so that you don't get little pieces of the brown from your base on your green top. Once again, just rolling down the sides and pulling free our base and just snapping any sort of larger overhanging edges. Perfect. Now here you want to clean your workstation down so that you've gotten rid of all of those little pieces of chocolate before we put this piñata together. All right, so this is where I like to attach mine to my cake board. So if you are going to use a cake board, make sure that you always know where the back of your cake board is, and mine is usually where I've joined my ribbon. And then you just want to take just a little bit of your green or your yellow, it doesn't really matter, just a little dollop, and this is just going to glue the base down to the board. Stick it down, and you've got a couple of seconds here just to check that it's nice and central, where it will still slide around a little bit before that chocolate or that candy melt starts to set. Lovely. Now, you want to take some of your green candy melt, or you can use dark chocolate, just depending on what you've got more of left over. Scoop it into a Ziploc bag, let all of the air out and seal it up. Everything's starting to take shape. Now, you want to fill your little piñata with candy, but don't be tempted just to dump all of the candy in there. You want to kind of take it in little handfuls and just position it in, because if you dump it all in, you're going to put too much pressure on not ideal sections of the case. You want to sort of allow that pressure to go in relatively evenly. Now I'm just going to add here just a couple of handfuls of M&Ms, and I'm doing this because the other chocolates that I've put in are quite large, and I really want to get a nice spill effect when we do break into this piñata. Those M&Ms are just going to be a smaller candy that helps us achieve that. Perfect. Now from here you want to make sure that you don't have any of those wrappers touching the actual lip and no candy on the board. And then we're going to take this candy melt, snipping off quite a generous corner here. We're going to pipe a nice big thick amount of candy melt all around the outside here, and then very quickly put on the top of our Christmas tree. Do just be careful that none of that candy melt drips over the side onto your cake board. If it does, get it off straight away, because it's less likely to stain if you can get it off as quickly as you can. All right, now working quite quickly here, take your top of your Christmas tree, make sure that you've got your best side facing forward and position it down onto that candy melt seal, and then run your finger all the way around the edge just to neaten it up. And getting down at eye level with your cake, come around, just make sure that your candy melt hasn't sort of come down around the outside edges of your dark Christmas tree base. All right, so it's time to start adding our details. So using the remainder of your green candy melt, we're going to just start adding on just some little, I guess they're lights or little baubles. So just place down a little tiny dollop of green candy melt and affix your M&Ms. Large ones, small ones, however many you like, in whatever colour scheme you like. You might like just to do red, green and white here, or you might like to, like me, add a bit more colour and make them all nice and bright. Something to think about here, make sure all of the M's from your M&Ms are actually facing inwards to the cake, not outwards so that your guests are going to see them. All right, so once I've added all of my larger M&Ms, I like to go around and just add in some of my little mini M&Ms. Gives you a little bit more of a variety of sizes. You could also add in peanut M&Ms here, or almond, or whatever candy you like. You might also find that your candy melt starts to harden a little bit by now, so you might just need to take it out of that Ziploc bag, put it in the microwave again just for 30 seconds or so just to re-melt it, and then put it into a fresh Ziploc bag so that you can keep going. Now finally we're going to add on our star and also the presents. So you've got your candy melts and you've got your star. With the candy melts you do want to put quite a generous amount of these, and you are going to have to support that star. So a nice little blob on the top there of that candy melt, and down goes the star sitting right into it, and then just support it with your fingers. If you want to here you can just go and smooth it down around the front edges. Beautiful. And then our finishing touches, of course, will be our presents. So however many presents you want to put on, if you want to put them at all, you can either just rest them on the board, or depending on whether or not you're going to be traveling this or actually moving it around, you can just pop a little bit of candy melt on the back and on the bottom and stick it down. I kind of like to stack the presents in different colours, sort of looking like they're piling up around the bottom of the Christmas tree. A couple on one side and a couple on the other side. So once my presents are all on, I'm just going to take one final look. Now that I've put that star on, you'll notice I left a bit of a gap around the top. I just want to put just 2 or 3 more little tiny mini M&Ms just around that top section. Beautiful. So there you've got your finished Christmas tree piñata. I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. Yet another great idea for your silicone giant cupcake mold. I hope that this is an idea that you will share with your family either this Christmas or next. And as always, thanks very much for tuning in to My Cupcake Addiction.